There's a quiet lie circulating everywhere today, whispered in songs, repeated on podcasts, preached in friend groups, and reinforced by social media. It's subtle, it's seductive, and it has shaped an entire generation of modern women without them even realizing it. It's the idea that freedom is found in escaping anything that feels limiting, including commitment, responsibility, loyalty, or emotional accountability. And on the surface, it sounds empowering. You hear it in the slogans, "Do what feels right," "Live your truth." If something doesn't serve you, walk away. Never settle. But here's the uncomfortable truth no one wants to admit. Most of these beliefs feel like freedom only when life is easy, and turn into self-destruction the moment reality hits. Because freedom without direction doesn't lead to happiness. It leads to chaos. Think about it. You tell someone, do whatever you want, and for a moment they feel powerful, unrestricted, untouchable. They feel like life has endless doors waiting to be opened. But every door you walk through closes another behind you. Every choice is a trade. Every yes is 1,000 silent no's. And modern women are being taught to ignore that cost entirely. Instead, they're told, you have time. You have options. You can always do better. Someone out there will accept everything about you. It's a comforting delusion, one built to soften consequences and delay responsibility. But eventually, every comforting delusion meets reality and loses. Here's where it gets dangerous. When someone is convinced they're gaining freedom, they don't realize what they're losing. Not until it's too late. A woman leaves a stable relationship because it wasn't exciting. She trades a loyal man for the dopamine rush of online attention. She replaces genuine connection with the temporary high of being wanted by strangers. And for a while, it looks like she leveled up. More options, more attention, more confidence. But freedom without structure isn't freedom. It's drift. It's being carried by every impulse, every emotion, every moment of validation. It's mistaking external praise for internal worth. It all feels like power until the attention slows down, until the options shrink, until the reality of consequences starts knocking. That's when the backfire begins. Not because women are flawed, not because men are victims, but because any human being who builds their self-worth on illusions will eventually suffer when reality demands the bill. And that's the heart of this entire topic. Modern women aren't falling for delusions out of malice. They're falling for them because these illusions feel like liberation, right up until they don't. This chapter sets the foundation for everything that comes next, because once you understand why these delusions feel empowering, at first you'll finally understand why the fallout hits so brutally later, and why so many women only see the truth when they're standing in the aftermath, wondering how everything slipped through their fingers. There's a moment, almost invisible, where the illusion begins. A modern woman gets her first real taste of digital attention. A few likes, a few DMs, a few comments telling her she's beautiful. It feels harmless, but something subtle begins shifting inside her, because in an instant, her brain receives a message it was never meant to handle. You have more options than you think. And that single idea becomes the seed of one of the most destructive delusions in modern dating. Before social media, before dating apps, before the dopamine slot machine of digital validation, a woman's perceived value came from the real world, from genuine interactions, real conversations, mutual interest, and tangible connection. Today, it's measured by a glowing screen, a screen that lies, a screen that exaggerates, a screen that convinces her she has limitless choices, even when she doesn't. Modern women are being conditioned to believe they live in a marketplace where attention equals attraction, attraction equals options, options equals superiority, superiority equals entitlement. This is the option illusion, the belief that romantic opportunity is abundant, endless, and always improving. But here's the truth. Attention is not desire. Desire is not commitment. Commitment is not compatibility. And compatibility is not abundance. But when a woman gets 200 likes and 30 DMs in an afternoon, it feels like abundance. It feels like infinity. It feels like every man on earth is waiting for her. This illusion creates an inflated sense of selectiveness. I deserve better. I can do better. He's not my type anymore. I'm too good for this. And here's where the danger begins. Because when someone believes they have endless options, they stop investing in real ones. Solid relationships start looking replaceable. Good men start looking boring. Stability starts looking like a prison. Commitment starts feeling like a downgrade. She begins comparing her real relationship to imaginary possibilities. Men who exist only as filtered selfies and flirty DMs. And every comparison makes the real world look smaller, weaker, less exciting. But here's the twist no one tells her. The options she thinks she has aren't real options. They're digital illusions created by men who have zero intention of commitment. Most of the men in her inbox don't want to invest in her. They want to use her, entertain themselves, or keep her as a backup tab open in their lives. And yet, her mind processes every message as proof of her desirability. So what happens next? She begins rejecting genuine interest in pursuit of fantasy interest. She trades real intimacy for digital attention. She confuses ego, boosts with actual opportunity. And eventually something painful happens. The illusion collapses. The attention slows down. The inbox gets quieter. The compliments lose intensity. The options evaporate. And that's when the backfire hits. Because the moment she starts seeking what she once rejected, she finds it harder to obtain. Not because she's less valuable, but because the illusion prevented her from recognizing value when she had it. Validation is powerful, not because it makes you feel good, but because it makes you feel real. That's where the addiction begins. For a modern woman, validation used to come from meaningful places, from her partner, her family, her accomplishments, or her community. It was rooted in reality, in who she actually was. But today, validation comes from something far more dangerous, an algorithm built to reward impulsiveness, exhibition, and emotional instability. And once that validation starts flowing, it feels intoxicating. A like, a heart, a comment, a DM. Each one hits the brain like a microdose of dopamine, a tiny psychological reward saying, you matter, you're wanted, you're valuable. And the mind begins to crave the next hit. This is how the validation loop forms. Post, attention, ego boost, crash, repeat. It's not confidence, it's chemical dependence. Here's the deeper truth. Every hit of validation reinforces the idea that external approval equals internal worth. And that is the most dangerous belief a person can develop. Because once someone starts sourcing self-esteem from strangers, standards shift. Priorities change, behavior becomes erratic, relationships become secondary, and intimacy becomes expendable. She begins crafting a version of herself, optimized for attention, not authenticity. More provocative photos, more revealing stories, more dramatic posts, more emotional chaos presented as self-expression. All of it designed to feed the algorithm, which then feeds her ego, which then feeds her delusion. This cycle slowly rewires her psychology. She stops asking, "Who am I?" and starts asking, "What will get the most attention today?" Real connection becomes undervalued. Stable love becomes boring. A committed partner becomes background noise. And the digital strangers cheering her on become the priority. But here's the hidden tragedy. Validation doesn't build self-worth. It replaces it. The more she relies on approval, the less she trusts her own inner value. The more attention she gets, the more insecure she becomes when it disappears. The more desirable she appears online, the less stable she feels in real life. So she doubles down. More posts, more flirting, more dopamine drips. And just like any addiction, the highs stop feeling high. She needs more intensity, more attention, more validation to feel the same hit she used to get from a single compliment. But eventually, the cycle breaks. Not because she chooses to break it, but because reality forces her to. Validation dries up, the novelty fades, younger competition rises, the algorithm moves on. And the silence hits harder than she ever expected. Because once someone becomes dependent on external approval, the absence of it feels like an identity collapse. This is why the delusion becomes so powerful, because it wasn't built on arrogance or ego, it was built on emotional hunger. There's a belief that has become almost sacred in modern culture. A belief repeated so often that questioning it feels offensive. I don't need anyone. It sounds strong, it sounds fearless, it sounds like the ultimate declaration of self-worth. But here's the twist most people never see. Hyper-independence isn't strength. It's a defense mechanism disguised as empowerment. It's the emotional equivalent of wearing armor everywhere you go. And like all armor, it doesn't just keep danger out, it also keeps connection out. Modern women are told to build a life where a man is optional. A relationship is secondary and vulnerability is a weakness. They're told that needing someone is a failure, that dependence equals danger, and that the safest way to move through the world is alone. But beneath that armor is something most won't admit: fear. Fear of being hurt, fear of being abandoned, fear of choosing wrong, fear of losing control, fear of being ordinary, fear of giving someone power over their emotions. So independence becomes the shield, a way to prevent heartbreak by preventing closeness. But here's the backfire. You can protect yourself from pain, but you also protect yourself from love. In the name of independence, modern women start rejecting anything that feels like reliance. Men who want to provide, men who want to lead, men who want to build a life together, men who want commitment, stability, or partnership. Instead, they chase relationships that require nothing. Men who demand nothing, expect nothing, and give nothing. Why? Because emptiness feels safer than vulnerability. Independence becomes a way to maintain total control, to avoid the discomfort of compromise, accountability, or emotional exposure. But no one tells them the cost. Independence without intimacy leads to isolation. Isolation leads to bitterness. Bitterness leads to delusion. When a woman convinces herself that needing a man is weakness, she eventually convinces herself that men themselves are the problem. My standards are too high. Men are intimidated by me. No one deserves me. Men today just can't handle a strong woman. But beneath the surface, the truth is simpler. She's afraid of depending on someone who could hurt her, so she creates a belief system that justifies staying alone. And when she finally does want real connection, the habits she built to protect herself become the very things that sabotage her. Because you can't build intimacy when you've spent years practicing detachment. You can't attract partnership when you've built your identity around not needing anyone. You can't receive love when your first instinct is to reject it. And that's the tragedy of the independence trap. It convinces women they're choosing strength, when in reality they're choosing fear dressed as freedom. There is a narrative pushed harder today than ever before, a storyline wrapped in empowerment, ambition, and independence. Focus on your career now. Love can wait. You have time. It's the core of the girl boss illusion, the belief that a woman's success must be built alone, that relationships are a distraction, and that settling down is something to think about later. But here's the problem. No one talks about. Later comes a lot faster than expected, and life doesn't pause just because a culture told her she had time. The girl boss message is addictive because it promises two things every human wants: autonomy, validation. It tells women they're powerful, unstoppable, superior, and destined for greatness. It gives them a sense of identity that doesn't require vulnerability, commitment, or emotional risk. But what's rarely told is the shadow side. Career success does not replace emotional fulfillment, and it cannot substitute for connection, partnership, or intimacy. Modern culture sells the illusion that work can fill the same void as love, that achievement can satisfy the same needs as companionship, that financial independence can replace emotional security. It can't. But the girl boss script doesn't allow space for that truth. Instead, it encourages a mindset of postponement. I'll settle down after I hit my goals. I'll think about a family once my career stabilizes. I'll focus on dating when I have more time. I'll find a good man when I'm ready. But life doesn't work like that. Biology moves. The dating marketplace shifts. Options change. Priorities evolve. And while men typically gain leverage with age, women are told their leverage stays constant, even increases indefinitely. That's the illusion. The reality: by the time many women realize they want partnership, they discover the dating landscape isn't the same as it was at 22. The options they once ignored are now taken. The men they desire want younger women with fewer emotional walls, and the career achievements they were told would make them irresistible don't matter to the men they are attracted to. Not because men disrespect success, but because success was never what men were looking for. Here's the part that stings. The girl boss mindset overvalues independence and undervalues relationship skills, skills that require time, humility, and emotional practice. So when she finally decides she's ready for love, she realizes she never learned how to receive it. No one taught her how to communicate without ego, how to compromise without resentment, how to trust without fear, how to build a life with someone instead of around them. Career skills don't translate into relationship skills. Achievement doesn't translate into femininity. Success doesn't translate into intimacy. And that's the painful backfire. The pursuit of independence leaves her unprepared for the very thing she eventually desires: connection. The girl boss illusion didn't empower her. It distracted her. It gave her motivation, yes, but it also stole time, softened accountability, and delayed emotional growth. And by the time she realizes the truth, she's standing at the intersection of ambition and loneliness, wondering how she got everything she wanted, except the one thing she never thought she'd miss. One of the most destructive delusions modern women fall for doesn't come from social media or dating apps or even culture. It comes from Hollywood. From childhood, they're fed one storyline over and over. Love should feel magical. Love should feel effortless. Love should feel perfect. Butterflies, fireworks, a soulmate moment. That's what they've been trained to expect. So when a relationship feels steady instead of cinematic, calm instead of chaotic, stable instead of electrifying, they assume something is wrong, not with the relationship, but with the man. This is the perfection myth, the belief that real love is intense, dramatic, and emotionally overwhelming. But that's not love. That's adrenaline. It's chemistry confused for compatibility, excitement mistaken for connection, and chaos dressed up as passion. Here's the truth. Real love is built, not felt. It comes from shared values, not shared dopamine. It comes from trust, not tension. It comes from commitment, not butterflies. But because women are conditioned to equate intensity with destiny, they often walk away from perfectly good men simply because the relationship doesn't feel like a movie. He's too predictable. He's too stable. He doesn't make me feel a spark. I should be more excited. What they don't realize is this. The spark they're chasing is often just their trauma recognizing something familiar. The men who feel exciting are usually the ones who trigger old emotional wounds, not the ones who heal them. The problem is, stability feels foreign, responsibility feels boring, consistency feels unromantic. So when a man shows up as a rock, steady, loyal, dependable, she experiences comfort as a lack of chemistry. But here's where the backfire begins. After enough heartbreak, chaos, and toxic cycles, the same women who rejected stable men start longing for exactly what they once pushed away. Suddenly, peace looks attractive, loyalty looks rare, consistency looks like gold. But by then, the men who offered those things have moved on. This is the emotional whiplash created by the perfection myth, overvaluing excitement, undervaluing stability, confusing love with intensity, fleeing from healthy relationships, ending up with unpredictable partners, mistaking emotional turmoil for connection, feeling exhausted and defeated. And eventually, reality sets in. Love isn't meant to feel perfect. It's meant to feel safe. Not boring, not passionless, not lifeless. Safe. But in a world addicted to stimulation, safety feels like a letdown until someone realizes what unsafe love costs. This myth backfires hardest when women hit the point where they finally crave the things they once dismissed. Honesty, presence, reliability, partnership, emotional maturity. And they realize that the men who had those traits weren't boring. They were rare. Every delusion has an expiration date. Not because life is cruel, but because reality eventually demands to be acknowledged. For modern women, the backfire doesn't come suddenly. It's gradual, creeping in slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. And then one day, it hits all at once. It begins with a feeling, a subtle loneliness, a quiet unease, a sense that something is missing, something deeper than attention, career success, or independence can satisfy. But the real shift happens when she realizes the truth she spent years avoiding, The world doesn't wait for anyone, and the options she thought were endless weren't. The attention she once relied on slows. The men she believed would always be there move on. The freedom she once celebrated starts to feel empty. This is the moment the backfire hits, the point where illusions collide with reality so directly that denial becomes impossible. It usually starts around the same time, when she looks around and realizes other women have what she secretly wants: stable relationships, families, partners who show up, a sense of belonging. And she begins asking questions. Why didn't I find that? Where did I go wrong? Why are the good men taken? Why am I attracting only broken people? Why does everything feel harder now? These questions aren't judgment, they're the first flicker of self-awareness. But the answers aren't easy, because the men she once ignored or rejected, the stable ones, the committed ones, the dependable ones, aren't in her orbit anymore. They've built lives, they've found partners, they've grown. And suddenly, she's left trying to date men who either don't want commitment, don't value her stability, don't offer long-term potential, or simply see her as an option, not a priority. This is where the emotional panic begins. The same dating market that once felt like an endless buffet now feels like a scarcity desert. The same men who once filled her DMs now scroll past her. The same attention that made her feel powerful now feels hollow. This is the emotional crash. The moment she understands that validation isn't value, options aren't security, and independence isn't connection. But the darkest part of the backfire isn't losing attention. It's seeing the truth about the choices she made, the relationships she sabotaged, the good men she overlooked, the red flags she ignored because the chaos felt exciting, the years she spent chasing illusions instead of building stability. That's when regret sets in. Not because she ran out of time, but because she finally sees clearly. For the first time, she understands. What she once rejected wasn't boring. It was reliable. It was real. It was rare. And all the illusions, the fantasy of endless options, the validation addiction, the girl boss script, the hyper-independence armor, collapse under the weight of a simple realization. Love was never the problem. Her beliefs were.